First and foremost, I want to say thank you to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. If it wasn't for him, this would not be possible. Low Nose Boxing. Hit the like button, share the video, leave a comment, subscribe. Let's cook. 2023, arguably maybe the best year in boxing. To my knowledge, to my experience, 2023, we've seen a lot of great fights. 2023 may very well be the best year in boxing, to my knowledge, to my experience. So with that being said, let's cook. It's time for me to give out the year-end awards for 2023. So we're gonna start off with the fight of the year. The fight of the year for me, hands down, was Devin Haney versus Vasyl Lomachenko. Devin Haney was the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. Lomachenko, future Hall of Famer, former top 3 pound for pound fighter, yet very, very, very formidable opponent. Even though Lomachenko was the underdog, Lomachenko turned back the clock for that fight and performed like a vintage Vasyl Lomachenko. That was a tough, close fight. We seen a lot of skills displayed in that fight, a lot of changing ebb and flows, a lot of adjustments in that fight. That fight wasn't a rock'em sock'em robot type of slugfest, but it was more like a high-speed chess match. You had a lot of drama in that fight. Good exchanges, and to many people, the decision may have been a little bit controversial, but nevertheless, Devin Haney versus Vasyl Lomachenko is the fight of the year. And the truth is, on this list, some of these options, some of these choices have nominees. But the fight of the year, hands down, Vasyl Lomachenko, Devin Haney, fight of the year for Low Nose Boxing 2023. Manager of the year, beyond a shadow of a doubt, Bill Haney, Bill Haney, Bill Haney. We got some nominees, Jay Prince, but for me, Bill Haney did a remarkable job with Devin Haney throughout his entire career. He has Devin Haney in the position that he's in right now. Shout out to Bill Haney. Trainer of the year, for me, has to be Bo McIntyre. Bo Mac was the architect behind the game plan of Terrence Bud Crawford's destruction over Errol Spence, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. Right? Prospect of the year. The nominees, we got Andy Cruz. We got Emiliano Vargas, the son of Fernando Vargas. We have Bruce Shushu Carrington, right? But for me, prospect of the year, I have to go with Andy Cruz. Andy Cruz, in only 2 fights, people are already trying to match him up and talking about him in a potential matchup with a top 10, top 15 fighter in Keyshawn Davis. Andy Cruz, in my opinion, is going to turn into the Cuban version of Vasyl Lomachenko due to his amateur pedigree and his high skill level, and now he's in Philadelphia training with Bozy Ennis. He's going to get better and better, and I believe that he's a fighter that will be fast-tracked fast. He's a fighter that's going to be a world champion within 10, 12 fights, in my opinion. Next on the list, the boogeyman of the year, the most avoided fighter of 2023. At one point, it had Shakur Stevenson as the most avoided fighter, but at the end of the day, whether the contract was a low ball offer or not, Devin Haney did send him a contract, so I can't put Shakur Stevenson as the most avoided fighter in boxing. So for me, there's 2 nominees. I would have said Subriel Matias, but Teofimo Lopez sent Subriel Matias a contract, so obviously he's not being that avoided. So it comes down between 2 fighters. David Morrell, excuse me, because Andy Cruz and David Morrell are both Cuban fighters. David Morrell is being avoided by a lot of fighters. He doesn't have that many pro fights, but he has a highly extensive amateur record, and his style as a pro is definitely right there. David, excuse me, I'm all over the place, because David Benavidez is somebody that David Morrell wants to fight. So for me, it's David Morrell and Jaron Boots Ennis, and I gotta say that Jaron Boots Ennis is the most avoided fighter of the year, because Terrence Bud Crawford is not trying to get in the ring with that man. A lot of fighters are not trying to fight Jaron Boots Ennis, Keith Thurman included. Errol Spence was avoiding him as well, and it's looking like Terrence Crawford is not trying to fight him neither. I don't think Bud is ducking him, because Bud has his sights set on bigger challenges in higher weight classes, but Jaron Ennis is there. Jaron Ennis has a title. So Jaron Boots Ennis, for me, is the boogeyman of 2023. Now we're going to go to Comeback of the Year. Comeback of the Year, we have some nominees. Anthony Joshua recently rebuilt his career. He had lost 2 fights back-to-back to Alexander Usyk, and he just had an impressive victory over Otto Wallin, a fighter who I was actually picking to upset Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua is a nominee for Comeback of the Year, Comeback Fighter of the Year, along with Joseph Parker, who scored an upset over Deontay Wilder. Raul Valenzuela, another fighter who I nominate for Comeback of the Year. He got knocked out by Edwin De Los Santos. He lost a close fight to Chris Colbert, and then he came back in a rematch to knock out Chris Colbert, right? And now many people are speculating that Raul Valenzuela may eventually turn out to be Gervonta Davis's next opponent. So that's a comeback right there for sure. And last but not least, who I nominate as the official comeback fighter of 2023 is none other than Teofimo Lopez, the Takeover. Teofimo Lopez had so much things going on in 2023. He had a performance against Sandor Martin, which was less than Teofimo Lopez's best. At the end of that fight, he was inside the ring questioning himself. People were saying, oh, Teofimo needs to get rid of his father. Oh, Teofimo is not mentally stable. He should cancel the fight. He should go in a straitjacket. He's not mentally fit to go in the ring with Josh Taylor. That is what the skeptics were saying about Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez, up to that loss to George Kambosos, was being mentioned amongst the 4 young guns of boxing. Gervonta Davis, Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, and Teofimo Lopez. Nobody was mentioning Teofimo Lopez among those guys until he faced Josh Taylor. Going into that fight, Teofimo Lopez had a lot of controversy due to some comments that he made, especially towards his own promotional company, Top Rank. So going into that fight, it was very, very likely that if Teofimo Lopez would have lost that fight, he probably would have been dropped by his promotional company. So it's pretty much safe to say that Teofimo Lopez's career was on the line. And he went in that ring with his back to the wall and put up an incredible performance. He outclassed Josh Taylor, who was a favorite, who was a former undisputed junior welterweight champion of the world, who never lost those belts inside the ring. Teofimo Lopez outboxed Josh Taylor. He beat Josh Taylor up. He almost stopped Josh Taylor in that ring. He beat him up so bad that Teofimo Lopez is on most people's pound-for-pound list, including mine. Teofimo Lopez is now back in the 4 young kings. Everybody mentions him among those guys. And now nobody's calling Teofimo Lopez out. He turned his whole career around. If it wasn't for Bud Crawford and his victory over Errol Spence, and Inouye's victory over Stephen Fulton, I would have Teofimo Lopez as Performance of the Year as well. Speaking of Performance of the Year nominees 2023. Devin Haney with a 12-round whitewash unanimous decision over Regis Prograis, a nominee, right? Inoue Inoue outclassed Stephen Fulton, moving up in weight to destroy a unified champion, a top 15 pound for pound, right? Gervonta Tank Davis destroyed Ryan Garcia in one of the most highly anticipated fights of 2023. Teofimo Lopez destroyed, outclassed Josh Taylor as an underdog, a nominee, Performance of the Year. Last but not least, who I have as the best performance of 2023, Terrence Bud Crawford. Terrence Bud Crawford outclassed and defeated Errol Spence Jr. in such dominant fashion that people were saying that Errol Spence should retire after that fight. Terrence Crawford beat Errol Spence so bad that in mythical fantasy matchups, people are actually picking him over Floyd Mayweather in a fantasy matchup. Nobody was ever saying that before. So Terrence Bud Crawford, for me, is the best performance fighter of 2023. The next category, Fighter of the Year. The nominees, Devin "The Dream" Haney. Once again outclassed Regis Prograis in his last fight. Prior to that, he defeated Vasyl Lomachenko in a very close, highly competitive fight. The next nominee, Inoue Inoue, destroyed Stephen Fulton. In his last fight he recently just had, about a week ago, he became an undisputed champion in the second weight class in the 4-belt era in a 12-month span. The next fighter for 2023, David Benavidez. David Benavidez did not win any championships, but he did something that everyone that has been linked to Canelo did not do. He carved his own path. He defeated 2 quality fighters. He beat Caleb Plant, and then he destroyed Demetrius Andrade, who was an undefeated, highly avoided 2-division world champion. He stopped him in 6 rounds. David Benavidez put himself in a place where if Canelo Alvarez does not fight him next, Canelo Alvarez is ducking him if he does not fight him next. David Benavidez is a nominee for Fighter of the Year without even winning the championship. Last but not least, who I consider as 2023's Fighter of the Year, Terrence Bud Crawford. Terrence Bud Crawford became an undisputed champion, a 2-time 2-division undisputed world champion in the 4-belt era. Now I know what people are gonna say, oh, Terrence Crawford only fought 1 time. Everybody fought more than once. How is he Fighter of the Year? Well, I'm gonna tell you why. Terrence Bud Crawford was involved in the most anticipated and important fight in boxing since Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. In the money division, the glamour division of 147 pounds. Usually in the past, the heavyweight division is the most important weight class in boxing, but the heavyweight division hasn't been what it's supposed to be since the 90s. So Terrence Bud Crawford beat a 3-belt champion who at the time on many people's pound for pound list was top 5, including mine. A fighter who will go into the Hall of Fame someday. A fighter who was also Terrence Bud Crawford's nemesis. In other words, this was to Terrence Bud Crawford what Tommy Hearns and Roberto Duran were to Sugar Ray Leonard, to what Manny Pacquiao and Miguel Cotto were to Floyd Mayweather, to what Evander Holyfield was to Riddick Bowe, to what Joe Frazier was to Muhammad Ali. This was Terence Crawford's nemesis, and Terence Crawford dominated that fight every single second of that fight and beat Errol Spence Jr. so convincingly that many boxing people, and I'm not just talking about us independent media, YouTube content creators, I'm talking about people that's in the game, fighters, promoters, and managers, actually are believing and saying that Terence Crawford could move to 168 and possibly defeat Saul Canelo Alvarez. That is the statement that Terence Crawford made after defeating Errol Spence Jr. So Terence Bud Crawford is fighter of the year, hands down. That's how I see it. That's how I carry it. Knockout of the year, I gotta go with Raul Valenzuela. He knocked out Chris Colbert so bad, man. I felt bad for Chris Colbert. I was rooting for Chris Colbert going into that fight, but Raul Valenzuela hands down scored the knockout of the year. Event of 2023. Even though Terence Crawford and Errol Spence was the most important, most anticipated fight, the biggest event hands down was Gervonta Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. Those guys sold 1 million pay-per-view buys. That's something that we haven't seen since Canelo Alvarez versus Triple G. So here's my list. Here's my awards. Fighter of the Year for 2023, Terence Bud Crawford. Fight of the Year 2023, Devin Haney versus Vasyl Lomachenko. Performance of 2023, Terence Bud Crawford destroying Errol Spence Jr. Comeback Fighter of 2023, Teofimo Lopez, The Takeover. Knockout of 2023, Raul Valenzuela knocking out Chris Colbert in 6 rounds. Most Avoided Fighter, Boogeyman of 2023, Jaron Boots Ennis. Prospect of the Year for 2023, Andy Cruz. Manager of the Year for 2023, Bill Haney. Trainer of the Year, Bo McIntyre. With that being said, God bless you. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to my channel. Low Nose Boxing, because low nose boxing. I'm out.